But talk to the audience about being in your 50s, 60s, or whatever, being older, and what do you have to do different to make sure that you stand out?
Yeah, well, I think it is a thing. There is ageism out there. There
There
are
is, okay.
small-minded hiring managers that say, "No, you're 40, you're 50, you're 60, I'm not going to hire you." But I also think sometimes, and I was guilty of this when I was in the market too, of using that as an excuse because I think a lot of times it can be traced back to not presenting yourself in the best way and also presenting yourself as old. I'll give you a couple examples.
Welcome to the Vision to Reality podcast. I'm your host, Curtis L. Jenkins, and in each episode, I speak with industry experts, thought leaders, and innovators to break down the strategies, techniques, and methods that turn their ideas into reality. Whether your vision is to scale your business, build and lead a winning team, prepare for your next big career move, this podcast is for you. Let's get started and bring your vision to reality. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vision to Reality podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Curtis Jenkins and I'm so glad you're here. Today we have an incredible episode lined up. We're talking about from setback to success, career resilience, leadership, and hiring insights, something that can make a huge impact on your career or leadership approach. And to help us dive deep, I have a fantastic guest with me today. Joining us today will be Ken Sher. He's a career coach, executive coach, and a keynote speaker with 30 years experience leading and coaching individuals and managerial teams. He was laid off from Johnson & Johnson after almost 25 years. After a short downtime, he recovered from the blow, figured out how to be successful in today's job market, and landed 3 jobs in his mid-50s, including a leadership role with Bristol-Myers Squibb. Ken also led the Johnson & Johnson sales recruiting department to record placements. Ken is president of Share Coaching. He'll share how he worked through his career transition and will provide tips on how to be focused, positive, and successful with interviewing. He will also answer any questions you have about your job search. Welcome to the show, Ken. Glad to have
Thank
you
you.
here.
Thank you, Curtis. I'm really excited to be here. I love that introduction, especially that first part. I'm going to cut that out of this video and play it over in my head a lot. It's very positive. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's good to have you here. Look, you and I, we got background. We've been in this job search game for a while. You were around with my first book. I highly respect you and what you have to offer. And the first question I want to ask you here is, who should listen to this podcast and why?
Well, I think really it's good for anybody who's still working because I
Yeah.
believe in terms of one's career, you always have to be managing your career because you never know what's going to come next. Way back in the day, the tech bubble burst and there were all these brilliant people out on the street unemployed. Then the housing bubble burst. And again, millions of people who didn't know they were going to be unemployed were unemployed. And then most recently, the pandemic did the same thing. It put a lot of people who thought they were secure in their jobs out on the street. So I really think anybody who is being proactive as they should be in managing their career should listen to this podcast.
Awesome. Awesome. So you have a group of people that you feel that should listen to this podcast, but talk a little bit about you and why do you do what you do?
Well, it's interesting. It really comes back to who I am. I spent, as you mentioned, 25 years at Johnson and Johnson, and unfortunately, when I was 52 years old with 2 kids in college and 1 in high school, I got laid off, and it set me back quite a bit. And I know we'll talk more detail about that shortly. But during that time, one of the things I did, which I usually start with my clients, is I got somewhat introspective. And I just started thinking about what is it that I want to do with my life. The 25 years at J&J were great, but what I realized too was it wasn't necessarily me. J&J gave me a little bit of that feeling of giving back and helping people, because I think that's what pharmaceuticals do. But on the other hand, it was very corporate and bureaucratic. Caused me to be introspective, figure out what I wanted to do next. As you mentioned, I had a couple more jobs in the corporate world until I found what I do now, which not only helps me use my experience and my skills to help people, but it fulfills my need to give back and to help people improve their lives.
The thing that struck me, 52 years old.
Mm.
And as much as I see on LinkedIn, talk to people, interview people, I hear this thing about ageism all the time. In any of my talks, that's one of the few things that people talk about, right? Like
Yep.
how do I get a job at the age that I am? People are trying to hire younger people. I don't believe that hiring managers are focused on saving money as much as they're trying to get the job done.
Mhm.
But talk to the audience about being in your 50s, 60s, or whatever, being older, and what do you have to do different to make sure that you stand out?
Yeah, well, I think it is a thing. There is ageism out there. There
There
are
is, okay.
small-minded hiring managers that say, "Nope, you're 40, you're 50, you're 60, I'm not going to hire you." But I also think sometimes, and I was guilty of this when I was in the market too, of using that as an excuse, because I think a lot of times it can be traced back to not presenting yourself in the best way and also presenting yourself as old. I'll give you a couple examples. If you have an AOL email address,
Right,
when I do some of
right,
my
right.
talks, Curtis, I joke, you might as well change it to old.com because
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
message you're
yeah.
sending. If you are not up to date on technology, if you're not presenting yourself in a passionate way, in a way that also shows you to be open to growing, to doing things differently. I think those are the things that cause managers to say, "No, I'm not going to hire that person." Not that they're old, it's that they didn't keep up and they're not keeping up.
Yeah.
I think the flip side of that, though, is if you can show those things, if you demonstrate a comfort with technology, if you talk about ways that you've changed over the years, that you continue to learn and grow, and also, if you lead with the fact that your experience is the benefit that you get with hiring me, I think that you can overcome some of those obstacles. It's not easy and it's still out there, but I think you have to change your mindset from the start to say, not people aren't going to hire me because of my age, but to say people should hire me because of my experience.
Got it. So great advice for those that are up in age. There are other mindset blocks that job seekers typically have. What are those mindset blocks? And what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think one of them is, well, there really are two. One of them has to do with a block around networking. I know it's a often talked about topic
Yep.
because the reality is networking is probably the way you're going to get your job. Not
Yep.
necessarily through that person that you know well, but through someone they're going to introduce you to.
Yep.
But still, the network is the key. And yet people are uncomfortable. And they're uncomfortable for a couple of reasons. One is, boy, I haven't spoken to that person for years. If I call them now, they're going to know I'm asking for a job or I'm looking for a job. So my first advice is that if you're currently working, is to start nurturing and make sure you continue to nurture your network with just regular contact, checking in, seeing how people are doing. Nothing fancy. Just keep your name and keep that connection strong. The second thing is, and I think this is important, is that networking is not about asking for a job. If it was, I would never be able to do it because it's just uncomfortable. And the reality is, the person you're asking a job, they're going to be thinking, well, I'm not going to introduce this person to somebody else because they're just going to ask them for a job. And it's just uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Networking is about connecting with people, learning about them, their career, how they got to where they got, what do they like about their job, what don't they like about the job or the industry, what recommendations might they have or advice for someone trying to break into that industry. I would ask if there's anybody else you could introduce me to. I'd certainly ask, is there anything I can do for you to help you? And then I would ask, can we keep in touch? And if something comes up that I think you might be able to help me with, would it be okay if I reach out to you? And I think if you go in with that approach, it's less uncomfortable. And I think also one of the keys is going with the approach that I want to help this person as much as I'm seeking help from them.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that a lot. And then it's the introverts, right? They come out on LinkedIn and they say, boy, do I hate networking.
Mhm.
I find that some of my most successful friends are introverts and they just find a way to do it very, very well.
Yeah. Well, I also think, Curtis, one of the things is because people think of networking as going to these big networking
Yes.
meetings, and I
Yes.
got to go introduce myself to those people, and it's
Yeah.
overwhelming. Shoot, I think I'm less of an extrovert than I used to be, but I
Yeah.
still am, but I'm uncomfortable in those situations.
Yeah.
I think if you go into those situations thinking, I'm going to find three, four, five people that I'm going to connect with quickly and set myself up for a one on one conversation, which is easier for an introvert, I think. And
Yep.
then also think about your introversion as a strength because introverts tend to listen more than they talk. And
Yeah.
that's always, I think, better for building relationships.
Got it. Got it. Go in there with intention and use your strength, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Good.
Got it. So here's something that intrigued me about your background that you got some secrets and I want to hear them. You got three jobs after your layoff, and I'll tell you what, people get laid off and they talk about being unemployed for years. What was it about you, your process, that allowed you to get three jobs after your layoff?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I do want to say, especially for people mid to late career, I don't like to use the
Yeah.
word old, by the way,
Yeah, yeah,
mid
yeah.
to late career. I think the first thing you got to do is get your head straight. And I'm going to make myself somewhat vulnerable and share something with you and your audience that is very personal. But when I got laid off, and just how it went, by the way, is I was at one of the J&J operating companies. Everything was going great. Got a new general manager. And in our first meeting, he said to me, Ken, I've led two different sales training and leadership development teams in my career, and you will never live up to my expectations. That was our first meeting. And I was leading a leadership development team at that time. And I was thinking, you know what? This guy needs to come to one of my classes because
Yeah.
that's not how you motivate people. And I'm also one of those people who often when I'm driving home, I'm thinking, oh, I should have said this, I should have said that. But I felt like I was on it. I said, you know what? If you look at my 24 years of performance reviews, I think you'll find I've always met or exceeded expectations, and I look forward to exceeding yours. To me, that was like a mic drop, man. I
Yeah.
nailed it, but it didn't change him at all. He said, no, you will not live up to my expectations. So over the next few months, he made it very uncomfortable for me, to say the least. And by the time I finally got called into HR, I was a mess. My confidence was shot. My sense of who I was broken, and to the point where I needed help, and I sought out therapy. And I went to therapy, and during that time, my therapist actually said to me at one point, "How did you last so long in corporate America? That's just not your way. That's not the
Yeah.
person you are. But you do what you have to do." So I share that with people because some of your audience might be going through that. And it's not uncommon, and it's not something you can't overcome. So that's the first thing you have to do, is just get your confidence back, take some time to be introspective, remind yourself of the great things you've done in your career, think about where you want to go with your career. So when I did that, ultimately, I realized that the best roles I had, the ones I felt the best about, were the ones where I was leading people and motivating people and helping people to be better, whether it was personally or professionally. So then I thought, well, I could go back to being a sales manager. I could go be a coach, or maybe I could go be a teacher. Teaching, I ruled out because from a compensation point of view, it didn't do what I was looking for. So obviously, I ultimately ended up in coaching. And I'm thrilled that I did that because it allows me to use all the skills that I had in the past. But the way I was able to land those three new jobs, frankly, was through networking. I was a vice president of a company, a Velocity Advisory Group of sales, of coaching, because somebody introduced me to the owner of that company. Then ultimately, my last role was at Bristol-Myers Squibb, where I was leading training and development for the oncology group there. And that was one that over the years, I've always wanted to get into oncology, but every time I interviewed for a job, they'd say, we'd love your background, but you don't have any oncology experience. So it's always frustrating because I'm like, well, how am I going to get it if you don't give it to me? But finally, a person who I had worked with years before was leading a training and development group at Bristol-Myers. He needed someone to head up his oncology group. He called me in and I said, I don't have oncology experience. He said, I don't care. I need someone who knows training and development. And so, not that I changed careers, but for those of you in the audience looking to change careers, that's one way to get by that. When you are connected with someone or someone in your network vouches for you, that you have the skills and the competencies and the experience to be successful, even if it's not specifically in that career. So, I'd hate to disappoint some of your audience, but networking is really where you need to be spending a lot of your time.
Hey, I just wanted to take a quick break to say thank you for tuning into the Vision to Reality podcast. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're ready to level up your business or career, I've got some great resources for you. To turn your business vision into reality, my book, Vision to Reality, Start Working, Start Living, is available now and filled with strategies to help you bring your goals to life. Plus, the companion Vision to Reality digital workbook is the perfect tool to guide you step by step through the process. You can grab both at curtisljenkins.com. And if you're preparing for your next job search, check out my book, The Only Job Search Book You Will Ever Need. This book uses proven marketing strategies that have been used for over 60 years to help you rise above competition to land your dream job. You can grab your copy at curtisljenkins.com. And I have great news. This book will be updated with a new version that includes recent impacts on the job search process, such as remote work, AI, government policy changes, and much more. Thanks again for listening. Now let's get back to the conversation. All right, Ken. So you talked about networking, and what I really want to talk about is something that you said related to confidence. So job seekers aren't as lucky as you in finding the next job. And then over time, the experience for them has their confidence diminish, right?
Yeah.
What would you say to that person that you can give some of your resilience to so that they continue on their job search?
Yeah, and that's a great point, Curtis, because as you know, often it's not even what you say, it's how you say it. And if you're not
Yeah.
coming across in a confident manner, people feel that. They hear it in what you're saying, and that could be detrimental to you getting an offer. As I mentioned, when I got let go, it was a very difficult time for me. And one of the things I did besides seek out therapy was I needed to prep stuff, right? I didn't have a resume. I didn't have a LinkedIn profile. I hadn't done that. I did, but nothing was on my LinkedIn really for 24 years. I didn't think I'd ever need it. I thought I was retiring with J&J. So I started going back in my work history and identifying those things that would make up my resume and my LinkedIn profile. And I do this with my clients too. We talk about some of the successes they have. What was the situation? What were the actions you took? And what were the results of those actions? And we literally put them down on paper. And there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, it reminds them of how good they are. It reminds them, yeah, I do have a lot to offer, that I have done a lot, and my next employer is going to be lucky to get me. It also helps you gather your information for your marketing materials, your profile, your resume, and it helps you start to begin to formulate your interview answers as well. When I was out, I literally printed that out and carried it with me. And that during the times when I was feeling particularly low, I would take it out and reread it and remind myself, yeah, I did all this, and there's plenty more I'm going to do in my career. So that was something that was very important. The second thing is, I coined this phrase, Curtis. I'm very proud of this.
Yeah.
I feel it's somewhat profound, although after 64 years of living to only have one profound thing, I probably could do better. But the phrase is that isolation is the enemy of the unemployed. And I think that sometimes people pull in when they're out of work and they think, I'm going to stay in my office, I'm going to be on my computer, I'm going to make calls, I'm going to do LinkedIn. And that's great. You have to do that. But we also all have this negative voice in our head. And when you're alone, over time, that voice can get louder and louder and overwhelming.
Yeah.
My wife had this book on her nightstand for a while. I didn't read the book. I didn't have to. And when I give you the title, you'll get it. And it was about a reporter going on a spiritual journey to find himself. And the title of the book was That Voice in My Head is an Asshole. And I think it's one of the great titles of all time, but it's the truth. Because that voice, that negative voice that's going to squash your confidence, when you're alone, and I realized that at that time, I was like, yeah, that's why that voice is what's holding me back. Once I started going out to networking meetings, which again, aren't always the most comfortable, but you start seeing other people going through similar things. And it's not like misery likes company, but you get ideas from other people, and even unemployed people can refer you to people, and you help other people. And I find that helping other people is very uplifting as well. And that leads me to another thing I did. I volunteered a little bit more. I volunteered with mentoring kids, and that helped me to continue to develop my coaching skills. So if you're a finance person, you might volunteer with a group and do their books for them. Or if you're an IT person, you might help out an organization, a church, a synagogue, whatever, with their technology. So not only is that good for your head, but it's good for your resume. It shows people you're staying up to speed, you're giving back, you're not just sitting home waiting for the phone to ring with your next opportunity. So I just think getting out and doing more, as well as just being a little retrospective on the great things you've done in your career, can help you with your confidence.
There was one word you said that really hit me. And you said isolation. And I mean, look, I can't tell you what the science says. I just know that I've heard things like solitary confinement, like in prisons, right?
Yeah.
That really messes up your head. And as creatures and as humans, we're communal.
Yeah.
And so I know that you are part of job search communities.
Mhm.
What communities would you recommend so that a person listening says, "Look, I feel like I'm in isolation. Is there a community out there for me?" Because whenever I want to learn something, I don't care what it is, real estate. When I wanted to learn how to be a landlord, I joined a real estate group.
Mhm.
Or want to learn AI, I joined an AI group. What communities do you recommend?
Yeah, I think probably in every state and every city, there are um, job search groups. I think going to a site like Meetup, you can see what meetings are going on locally for you. I think you could go on LinkedIn and put out a request. Hey, I live in this area. Who knows if groups go that are, job search support groups that are helping out. I think you could also look outside of the job search world too to start getting involved in maybe chambers of commerce or different organizations, like I said, volunteering, where you're going to meet different people. I find like not only does volunteering lift my spirits, but there was one point when I was at Johnson Johnson, we'd go to these big sales meetings in nice places, and then we'd get a half a day of rec, and you could go golfing, or you could go to the amusement parks, or you could do a day of giving. And after a couple of years doing the fun things, I thought, I could always do that. I mean, I don't need J&J to pay for that. So I did the day of giving, which turned out to be the best day that I had out of all
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah.
But I found myself filling boxes of foods next to the vice chairperson of Johnson and Johnson, this woman who I never would have met in my life.
Right.
And we connected. We had a great conversation. We were both doing the same thing. And so it not that it led to anything, but it really gave me confidence that, boy, I can speak to anyone. And if I needed to, I would have felt comfortable reaching out to her. So I think you have to look at your local community, look at your local places of worship. They often have groups. LinkedIn might be a place to help you and volunteer. I think those are organizations and groups that can really help you with your confidence.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. In fact, I always say volunteer. You get to learn some different skills, right? So you take your passion. I want to do a quick pivot here. Job search is so different now, and AI is just in our faces all day, every day. And there are job seekers that are using AI to help them with their resumes. There are recruiters that are using AI to help scan resumes and sort of filter out. But it gets a bad name depending on what side of the job search ecosystem that you're in. Give me your takes on AI, and what do you coach your folks on AI and how to use it?
Yeah, I think AI, like anything, it could be used for good or for evil.
That's right.
I think if there's an over reliance on AI, there are a number of things that come from that. First of all, I don't think you're being 100% true to yourself. And I think
Right.
you need to be when you're out there looking for a job. I think, secondly, sometimes it's obvious that it's AI, and that's not going to reflect well on you when a human being is reviewing your resume. But I do think the good parts of AI, identifying things that will help you. Sometimes it is good. Here's my resume, AI, let me put it in and give me another version of it. And then you could see, you might see some areas where it, boy, that really sounds like a program wrote that. And you edit it, you put it into your own voice. You might use AI to identify the key words that a recruiter might use to find someone to fill a job you're interested in or to find you. And I think AI can also be used to, help you identify what's really important in that particular career or marketplace that you're interested in. What's important today? What are the issues I need to be aware of? Going back to the issue of ageism, if you're in a conversation, whether it's networking or in an interview, if you could reference the things that people are dealing with today, that might take ageism off the plate because, boy, this person's on the cutting edge. I don't care how old they are, they know what's going on in the marketplace. So I just think AI gives you the opportunity to take it up to the next level, but you also just have to be aware that it still needs to be reflective of you and who you are.
Got it. What's a question that I didn't ask you that you would want to answer that's going to make an impact on anyone that's listening?
Well, I think it has to do actually with interviewing. I think interviewing is where a lot of people go wrong. There are times I think people try to come across as something they're not. They try to be, oh, this is an interview. I'm going to be just straight laced. I'm just going to answer the interview questions. It's almost like an interrogation rather than a
Yeah.
conversation. And I think it's important that people be who they are, express themselves in the most authentic way for two reasons. One, it's your best bet, right? You
Hmm.
hear the expression, don't try to be someone you're not, right? It's hard enough to be myself. How can I try to
Right.
be someone
Right.
else?
Right.
That's one thing. And the other thing is, too, believe it or not, you don't want to land a job that you're not a good fit for because then
Right.
you're just going to find yourself in the same situation again. And that makes it even harder. If you're in a job for a few months and then you realize it's not the right job for me, it's not something you can't come out of. It just makes it a little more challenging. So, the first thing I would say is be yourself. But the second thing is our world, Curtis, has gotten a lot more casual, a lot more informal.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes people take that a little too far. You
Oh
know, they
yeah.
don't, they don't, even though it's old school, I guess, there are some things that still work. Showing up on time,
That's right.
dressing appropriately,
That's right.
speaking appropriately, following up with a thank you note. The things that are just really common courtesy, let alone professional. So I think there's that balance of being yourself, being authentic, and then also, again, going to the norms maybe of yesterday of being just really coming across as professional.
And then so I'm getting images in my head, right? I think when we were talking prior to the show, I talked about some of my woes of interviewing and people not showing up as if they're coming to somewhere professional. But now we're interviewing online, right? In fact, I can't remember the last in-person interview I've done in the last few years. So how is that different for interviewers now? And is any parts of your advice you want to add to that?
I think, I do think online interviewing, first of all, again, is an opportunity for a mid to late career person to show they're comfortable with technology.
Yeah.
I'm online, I'm on my screen.
Yeah.
It's as if we were in the same room together, Curtis. I'm not acting any differently than I did. I'm using my hands and
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
all over the place here. I'm using my tone of voice, changes in volume, changes in pacing. I think, again, sometimes people overthink it and they say, I'm on a video, I got to be different. And I think it's
Yeah.
really, again, important to be yourself, be authentic. The other thing is, too, you've got to prepare. I mean, Curtis, you and I, we talked about the background noise. Like, we want to make
Yeah.
sure people know, don't be coming in my room. I'm on an interview.
That's
Want to
right.
make sure the background, if it's not clean and professional like yours, it's blurred because mine isn't clean and professional behind me. I got my grandson's crib back there that doesn't give the image I'm looking to portray here. So I just think it's really making sure that the things around you and the way you present yourself is thought about before you get into that virtual interview. And then also just the technical parts. Hopefully I've been practicing what I'm about to say, and that is, if I'm looking at you, Curtis, right now, I'm not making eye contact, but
Right.
I am on my screen.
Right.
But I got to look in the camera to make eye
Yeah.
contact. It's a little uncomfortable. It's a little different.
Yeah.
And you don't want to look like a psycho either, just staring at the camera. So you got to, again, like you would in person, you look at the
Right.
person, maybe you're looking away, maybe you're looking at, but it also, all those things too. To me, one of the most important things about being successful in an interview is to practice and to practice out loud. Practice with somebody that's going to give you good, honest feedback. If you think about an athlete, a lot of times you might see an athlete, they're laying on the floor in the locker room, they got headphones on, their eyes closed. They're playing the game before they get
That's
out on
right.
the field or the
That's
court.
right. That's
You
right.
want to do that so that when you're in that interview, whatever you got, I'm ready to go. And when you practice, your confidence will rise. And when your confidence rises, the stress goes down. So I can't stress enough that people need to practice by themselves with someone who will give them feedback, and that will make a huge difference in how they perform in the interview.
Gotcha. So talk to me about your current future. right? So
Yeah,
what do you got? What do you got upcoming? What's new and exciting in your world?
yeah, I appreciate you asking that. And I've been, as we were talking, I'm thinking, I got to work this in. So thank you for asking. And I probably should have worked it in some of my answers to your questions. But I'm very excited because I'm going to be coming out with a book sometime this summer. It's in the final editing stages. I finished the cover, and that's also very exciting. And the book is called What's Trust Got to Do with It? Transforming Leadership, Culture, and the Job Search. So it's three sections. And trust is an acronym. And I really learned while I was at Johnson & Johnson the value of trust. I'm convinced that trust is the foundation of all great relationships, and great relationships are the key to success. So I built what I call the trust success model. And trust is an acronym that stands for transparency, results, standing, simplicity, and teams. And for the basis of this conversation, the way it works is, first of all, you need to be able to trust with the interviewer, right? They need to know what you're saying is truthful. They need to know that if they hire you, you're going to come through and do all the things that you've said. So you need to connect with that interviewer. And from a job search point of view, the transparency part is doing that retrospective look at yourself, getting your head straight, figuring out where you want to go. Results, you need to know the results that you want to talk about that come across in your resume, your profile, and your interview. Understanding is about understanding social media and how to use LinkedIn. That's a big difference over the years, right? How to use LinkedIn effectively to build your network and find your opportunities. Simplicity, I focus on interviewing. As I mentioned, it's very stressful, so keep it simple. Keep your answers simple. And then teams is about having two teams, your professional network, and then that's going to help you get your next job, and then your personal team, those people that'll support you and love you and be there to pick you up when you're feeling down and be there to celebrate with you when things are going well. And then the trust model also works with my executive coaching side, but I'll save that for another interview with you.
Gotcha. That's amazing. I'm looking forward to it. In fact, I don't know, do you have a design cover yet?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so I'll be sure to make sure that that's added into this show so that people can get it. And look,
Great.
we've had such a powerful conversation. I get goosebumps every time I get a chance to connect with you. Sometimes we get to talk one on one. Sometimes we're part of a panel of speakers, and I really want to thank you for coming out and speaking with us today. So do me a favor. Why don't you tell us, tell me, tell everyone, how can they connect with you?
Yes, thank you, Curtis. And first of all, I think I've expressed to you before too. And that's one thing maybe it's in my old age, I feel like it's important to show people how you really feel. And I think I've
Yeah.
expressed to you how much I respect and admire what you've done with your career and as a person. But people can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. And actually, in my contact information is my calendar link. So if you want to talk, it's not like I'm going to put a heavy sell on you at all. I'd be happy to talk to you and help you in any way that I can. And then if you want to talk about working together, of course, I'll be open to that. But that's not required and there's no obligation. You can reach out to me directly at Ken at Sher Coaching, Sher, Ken at SherCoaching.com. Any way that you'd like. I'm always happy to connect with people. And again, I love helping people. So if I can help anyone out there, it would be my pleasure.
That's perfect, Ken. And we'll be sure to link all your information to the show notes so folks can stay connected and support your work. And to everybody listening, I want to thank you for joining us for another episode of the Vision to Reality podcast. Until next time, keep bringing your visions to life. See you next time. That's a wrap on today's episode of the Vision to Reality podcast. A huge thank you to today's guests. You can find all of their contact information in any resources mentioned in the show notes below. Also, can you do me a big favor? If you found today's conversation valuable, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a comment and a review, and share with a friend or colleague who could benefit from the information shared today. And remember, vision without action is just a dream. Let's turn those big ideas into reality. I'll see you in the next episode.